Dr. Stanley G. Robertson. Dr. Robertson grew up in a project building on the south side of Chicago, where he spent many days playing chess, pitching pennies, and dodging street gangs. His original career goal was to become a graphic artist, but he pleaded temporary insanity and joined the Marine Corps instead. He considered that when Plan A fails, you still got 25 letters in the alphabet. So he traded in the life of a devil dog for the life of a suit. Somewhere through the middle of the alphabet, he received an accounting degree, trained as a lawyer, and then earned a doctorate in accounting. Yes. As one might reasonably conclude from all this alphabet soup, he finally ended up as an author. Dr. Stan wrote 8 books in the last 2 years. Yes. Jack Canfield, creator of Chicken Soup for the Soul, calls Dr. Stan the coolest person he knows. And he predicts that Dr. Stan's new book, Quit, will be a bestseller. Dr. Stan has come to be known as the Quit Doctor because of his relentless determination to heal the world of the stigma and shame associated with the concept of quitting. He is an author, coach, and speaker. Christ Universal Temple, let's stand to our feet and welcome Dr. Stan.
All right, so I am super excited to be here today, as you might imagine. Number one, I'm so excited because of my book, Quit. We've been talking about the book all month. The other reason I'm so excited about being here is because every time I get to interact with very smart and successful people, I get excited. I don't know, it's just something that just kind of happens, right? So I'm at, and of course, today being here at Christ Universal Temple is actually one of my favorite places because of the people here are so smart and so successful. And this is the kind of the thing that gets me going, right? So I teach, I'm the CFO for some people who may not know. I'm the Chief Financial Officer here at Christ Universal Temple. But I also am a college professor. I teach accounting and business law at DeVry University and the Keller Business School. And every semester, I get excited all over again, right? Why? Because I get to meet new and successful people. The students that come to college are some of the smartest and brightest people in the world, right? So I'm interacting with these students, and the first day of class, I always ask the same thing. I say, how do you feel, right? And people say, I'm excited. Some people will say, well, I feel nervous, I feel anxious, and so forth. So one day I decided to ask a different question. So I'm not going to ask the same question again. I'm going to ask a new question. So that day, at the beginning of the semester, I said, tell me, everybody in the class who wants to receive an A, let me see your hands. And when I did that, of course, hands went up. One hand didn't go up. I'm looking at the guy, I'm like, okay, he probably didn't understand what I said. So everybody who wants to receive an A in this class, let me see your hands. Hands go up, except this one guy. So I look at the guy and I said, you don't want to get an A in the class? He said, no. I said, well, what grade do you want to get in the class? He said, I want to get a C. So now I'm baffled, right? I'm interested. I'm like, what? So why do you want to get a C? He said, I want to get a C because I don't want to work that hard. He said that, well, at least the guy's honest, right? He said that I can write 5 pages and get an A, but I can write 5 sentences and get a C. And there's some logic to this, right? Now, I've got a friend. He's a tax attorney. He has a theory about college and about education. His theory is this. His theory is that C's get degrees. Amen. Yes. See, somebody back there know what I'm talking about, right? C's get degrees. So I recognize, okay, this guy's got something. The problem for me is that C is average, and average is mediocre, and I hate mediocre, right? I hate average. As far as I'm concerned, if you're going to do something, you should do it the best. You should do it with everything that you possibly can. So with my book, the first thing that I want to say is quit being mediocre. But I have a few other things that I want to share just real quickly. These are just a few cartoons that's going to give you a couple of other ideas about some of the things you ought to quit. So here we see a guy. Now, this guy apparently has a gambling problem. He's sitting there with his buddies. One of the guys says, "Don't say goodnight yet, dear. If I don't win this next hand, you're going to be going home with Dave." And you can see the look on Dave's face. You can see the look on Dave's face there. So I would say, quit. Quit gambling. That's one thing. If you have a gambling problem, of course, you ought to quit gambling. So the next thing is, this guy's in his doctor's office, and he's having a conversation with the doctor. The doctor says, "A compulsive lying disorder, you say?" I find that very hard to believe. Let that sink in for a minute. So he can't believe the guy. In other words, this guy says, "I have a compulsive lying disorder." He says, "I don't believe you." You guys don't get it. All right, all right, so this guy's in the dentist's office, and he's looking in the dentist's mouth. He's got a few teeth missing, and he says, "Been talking back to the little woman again, have you, Mr. Simpkins?" So what does that say? What does that tell you? Quit talking back to your wife. All right, and by the way, I've been married 32 years, and my wife is here. Rutanya, I see somewhere out there. Yes, all right, all right. As you can imagine, I got all my teeth. I never talk back. So this guy's chained to the desk. He says, "Quit complaining. In these times, most people would be happy just to have your job security." All right. So this next one says, now some of you probably are sitting next to this person in the audience right now. She says, "If you haven't got anything nice to say about anyone, come sit next to me." Who's sitting next to that person? Let me see your hand. Anybody sitting next to that person? Oh. All right. All right. This one, I would say, quit being jealous. Quit comparing yourself to other people. He says, this first guy says, "Jesus loves me." The second guy said, "Jesus really, really loves me." Now, this just makes good sense, right? Never smack a man chewing tobacco. And this guy's sitting with his wife. He has a very grim look on his face. The wife says, "If you think I talk too much, you should come right out and say so. Then we can talk about it." So what's the point? The point is quit talking too much. All right, so how many people have believed winners never quit and quitters never win? Let me see your hands. Winners never quit and quitters never win. Okay, that's good. I think that's ridiculous. I think that it is a total fallacy. It is just plain wrong, because the fact of the matter is that winners, successful people, quit all the time. Oprah Winfrey quit local TV and became a queen of talk. Michael Jordan quit baseball and won a three-peat. The Rock, anybody know The Rock? The Rock quit wrestling and became a superstar actor, and Arnold Schwarzenegger quit being a superstar actor and became governor. So successful people really do quit all the time. And I could see that some of you still don't believe what I'm saying about this idea, this notion that quitting can lead to your success. So I want to bring it right down home, right down your street, right down your alley. And I'm going to talk about, what I want to do is I want to give you the history of Johnny according to me. The history of Johnny according to me. Why? Because Johnny Coleman was a quitter. Johnny Coleman, one day she had invited this woman. The lady's name is Ponder. The lady comes to the church. She's a prosperity speaker. She was at the church. They went downtown. When they got downtown, they show up at Marshall Fields. Johnny Coleman is off doing her thing. Ponder is over kind of drifting toward the diamond stand. Johnny Coleman notices she's looking at the diamonds, and then Johnny Coleman says, "Ponder, what are you doing at the diamond case? Get away from there." Now, at this point, the lady is getting kind of embarrassed, right? Because the security guard is looking at her, the customers are looking, the clerks are looking. So they get outside, and she says to Johnny Coleman, Johnny, why did you do that to me? That was embarrassing. And Johnny says, Ponder, I've got a problem with you and diamonds. And the lady says, well, you can't have a problem with me. I don't even own any diamonds. And she says, I do have a problem. She says, my problem is you are a prosperity speaker. And every time you show up in town, you talk about diamonds, and all of my people keep giving me gifts. And mostly they give me diamonds. She says, oh, I've only got 5 hands. I mean, fingers. Now, she had 5 hands. That'd be interesting. So she says, I only got 5 fingers. So what she decided to do that day is quit receiving diamonds. Now, she didn't quit wearing diamonds. As a matter of fact, if diamonds are a girl's best friend, Johnny Coleman had a lot of best friends, right? So she didn't quit wearing diamonds, but she quit expecting diamonds as gifts. Johnny Coleman, when she was in college, she was in Wiley College in Marshall, Texas. When she was at college, she wanted to be a saxophonist. She played the saxophone, and she wanted to have a career playing the saxophone. But what did she do? She quit the saxophone, became a teacher at the Chicago public schools. Then a doctor told her, you've got 6 months to live. What did she do? She quit listening to the doctor, went off to Unity Village. When she got to Unity Village, something happened. They said, you can't stay in the dormitories because you're black. She's like, I am? So she said, if I can't stay in the dormitories, then I quit. What happened? They then rallied around her, and they integrated the dorms, and that's how the dorms got integrated at Unity Village. So again, she quit. Johnny Coleman was also a builder of things. She built several buildings, several structures. One of the structures she built was something you guys refer to as the Jewel Box, where she used to have church service. What did she do? She quit service there and built this structure here. If she had never quit, she never had came to this structure that we're sitting in today, right? Can I get a hand for the 119th and Ashley? And then she owned the school, and she managed the school, Johnny Coleman Academy. What did she do? She quit managing Johnny Coleman Academy. She sold it to Chicago public school system. So again, the point is that Johnny Coleman knew how to quit. She knew when to quit, and she was a very successful quitter. So there you go. For all of you people who are quitters, you're in good company, right? So what I've done is I've created this book, and the book is called Quit, and I've developed 4 steps for a successful quitter. 4 steps on how to be a successful quitter. And we've been talking about that all month. The first week, Reverend Wells talked about how to quit quickly, which is step 1 in the process of being a successful quitter. What do I mean by being a successful quitter? That just means that if you're going to reach your goals, if you're going to be able to do great things in life, you've got to know when to stop doing the one thing and re-engage your efforts to something that's new and something that's going to be more profitable and more beneficial to you. So Reverend Wells talked about the idea that you need to quit quickly. What does that mean? That means that anytime you have a goal, you need to recognize that that goal is not working as quickly as possible. This is what successful people do. They don't keep doing the things that's not working. They look at it, they recognize this doesn't work, I'm going to shift my energies over to this other thing, and they do it as fast as they possibly can. I know this young lady. Her name is Nicole. Nicole was married. She was kind of overweight. Now, in her own words, she was fat. She was married to this guy who was tall and handsome. They owned a string of bakeries in Southern California. Eventually, someone said to the husband, oh, I didn't know the fat lady behind the counter was your wife. Now, this is pretty bad. They're laughing. This is pretty bad, right? So, eventually they get divorced. And after they got divorced, she wanted to continue ownership of the business, the bakeries. Why did she want to do that? Because she wanted to continue the relationship. And as Reverend Wells mentioned in week number 1, in order to quit, there's 2 things you have to do. Number 1, you've got to be able to give up the effort. And number 2, you've got to be able to give up the commitment. Now, she gave up the effort because she was out of the relationship. She was out of the marriage. They had a divorce. But she never gave up the commitment. That means what? That means that she wanted to hold on to that business with this guy so that she could continue to be in a relationship with him. So she never could lose the weight. She kind of went up and down. She was miserable. Eventually, she gave up the business. She quit working in those bakeries with the husband. And what happened? She lost the weight. She became a very successful author. She became a, a yoga coach, and now she travels around teaching people about yoga and about how to fight against bullying and so forth. So the point is that in the first step, if you're going to be successful at quitting, you do need to be able to make the decision to quit very quickly if you're doing something that's not working for you. Step number 2 is understand negative emotions. And Reverend McDowell talked about this in week 2, understand negative emotions. The idea is this, is that this concept of quitting has gotten a bad rap as far as I'm concerned. In other words, the word quit is a negative thing. Like, if I want to insult you, let's say Ella sitting there. I want to insult Ella. What do? Ella, you're a quitter. See, that's an insult, right? She don't like that. So, but I think that the word quit should not be a negative. It is not a negative thing. In fact, it is a positive thing. And as far as I'm concerned, it is a principle of success. If you want to be successful, you need to know how to quit, when to quit, and do it fast and often. The third point is initiate new goals. And this is what Reverend Wills talked about last week. How do you initiate new goals? Because when you do quit, you can quit all day long, right? But you're not going to be successful just because you quit a thing or you quit something, right? If you quit, you've got to quit, and then you've got to change your actions, create some new goals for yourself. And that's what we mean by step 3. So today I'm talking about step number 4, transform your behavior. Transform your behavior. So what does that mean? That means that if you're going to be a successful quitter, when you quit something, you can't continue doing the same thing that you did before you quit, right? Because if you keep doing the same thing, then it stands to reason you're going to get the same result. So therefore, after you go through these 3 steps, that final step, transform your behavior, that means that you need to start doing things differently than you had done them in the past. So the first thing that I would say is, if you want to transform your behavior, one of the things you need to do is quit talking too much. Quit talking too much. Let me see the hands of people, just real quick. Show of hands, how many people talk too much in the room? Okay. All right. That's good. That's good. Because most of us talk too much. There's a reason why God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Why? Because you should listen twice as much as you talk. But most of us don't do it, right? Most of us do the opposite. Most of us talk way too much. And if you really think about it, you're never learning anything if you're talking. I mean, that's just kind of a given, right? You can't be learning if you're talking, right? Although some people may disagree with that. But in any case, there's a movie that I saw, and I love this movie, Denzel Washington. Anybody like Denzel Washington? Yeah, that guy's pretty amazing, right? You know, some people say I remind him of Denzel. But in any case, so Denzel Washington is in this movie. The movie is called Crimson Tide. Crimson Tide. You guys know that movie? All right, I like that. All right, so the movie is called Crimson Tide. There's one scene in this movie in particular. Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman, who's like the captain, they're on a submarine. Gene Hackman is the captain of the submarine. Denzel Washington is like the guy in charge or whatever. So one day they're up on the deck. Is that what you call it? Yes. Hey, you were in the Navy? Oh, on the bridge. Okay. I think the bridge is inside the submarine, but all right. So he says, just do your lesson. What is he saying? He's saying, quit talking to me, leave me alone, right? All right, all good. It's all good. So in any case, Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman, they're on top of the sub. It didn't go under the water yet. So they're on top of the submarine, and they're just kind of looking out. They're smoking a cigar. They're looking at the sunrise. It's just like early in the morning. And Gene Hackman, he's smoking a cigar, and he's talking. Denzel Washington is just chilling, right? He's doing nothing. He doesn't say anything. Gene Hackman is like, man, this is the best view. This is the greatest view ever. You know, God is awesome and all this kind of stuff. And Denzel Washington is silent the entire time. When they're done, Gene Hackman looks at Denzel Washington, and he says, bravo, Mr. Hunter. Bravo. And Denzel Washington looks back at him, and he's like, sir? And he says, yes, you know how to shut up. So his point is that you don't always have to talk. Sometimes you need to be able to stop talking and listen to the other person. And sometimes we get this awkwardness, right? Especially like someone's sick, somebody made their transition, you know, you're talking to the person, you want to be able to say something. You feel the need, you have to say something. But in reality, you don't have to say anything. If you're visiting a person like a loved one in the hospital, you don't necessarily have to talk. They may just be happy for your presence, right? They're happy that you're there. So you don't always have to say something. So the point is, quit talking too much. So that would be the first thing you can do to transform your behavior. Point number 2, thing you can do to transform your behavior is quit thinking about what you don't want. Quit thinking about what you don't want. Now, a lot of times when we want to do new things, right, we want to make new things happen. We want to do great things in life. We want to, in fact, change the world. But what we do is we'll say what we don't want. Now, saying what you don't want is not a really good thing, right? Why? Because when you say what you don't want, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, sometimes you have back problems. You don't want your back to hurt today. If you say, I don't want my back to hurt today, what are you going to do? You're going to kind of start favoring your back. You're going to start moving in ways that you would not normally or naturally move. And the fact that you're thinking, I don't want to do this, can make that exact thing happen, right? Not good. What if I said to you right now? So I say to everybody in the room, don't think about a pink elephant. What's going to happen? Well, you're thinking about a pink elephant, right? It makes no sense. It's ridiculous. So don't think about the things that you don't want. Think about the things that you do want. What are the things you want in your life? What are the things you want to attract to yourself? That is the best way to do it. And I'll give a little test. You know, Reverend Galen, he always gives some homework at the end of his lessons, right? So I'm going to give my homework now. So my homework is this. We're going to do a little kind of unscientific study here. So what I want everybody to do is take out a piece of paper. I want you on that piece of paper, I want you to write on the paper, do not break this window. When you get home, I want you to tape that piece of paper to your car window that says, do not break this window. What do you think will happen the next morning? Yeah, it's going to be a lot of broken glass around the city of Chicago, right? Because if you say don't do something, that is the thing that's going to happen. So I would caution you, now this is just extra. This is extra. Don't do. All right. Reb says quit the homework. Don't do that homework. All right. So, but the thing is that saying what you don't want is not going to get you what you want, right? You need to think about the things that you do want. And those are the things that you will be able to attract into your life. Point number 3 is quit being comfortable. If you want to transform your behavior, quit being comfortable. What's his name? Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart said this. Kevin Hart has a book out. So I read Kevin Hart's book. And in the book, he was talking about how he became very successful. And one of the principles of success that Kevin Hart described is quit being comfortable, right? He said that you got to get outside of your comfort zone. Now, he said this is really only for the very highly successful people, super successful people. If you're mildly, remember that guy I told you about who said, I want to get a C in class? If you're that guy, then this doesn't apply to you. But if you're the person who really wants to be super successful, highly successful, then you should quit being comfortable. Okay, everybody, hold your hands like this. Hold your hands like this. All right, now just take your hands and do that, and then fold your hands just like that. You guys see that? All right, you see that? All right, so everybody fold your hands and take a look at your hands. Now, some people, your right thumb is on top. Some people, your left thumb is on top. All right, so I want you to notice whether your right thumb or your left thumb is on the top, right? Okay, so everybody whose right thumb is on top, let me see your hands. Just hold your hand up if your right thumb is on top. Okay, those are the smart people in the room. All right, everybody whose left thumb is on top, let me see your hands. All right, those are the sexy people in the room. All right. Now, all right, first of all, that's not true. That's a little trick I learned from Jack Canfield. So forget that. But what's the point? The point is this. The point is that when you fold your hands like this, well, okay, fold your hands again. Hold your hands like this. Now, when you put your hands like that, I want you to just shift your hands up where the opposite thumb is on top for you. So if your right thumb was on top before, now I want your left thumb to be on top and vice versa, right? How's that feel? It doesn't quite feel right, right? It's a little uncomfortable, a little unnatural. All right, so what's the point? She said, yeah. So the point is that things that are uncomfortable, sometimes you have to do things that are uncomfortable. So if you're trying to reach high-level goals and trying to reach a high level of success, you're going to have to do things that are uncomfortable sometimes. Why? Because success is right beyond your comfort zone, right? So right there, it could be that next step. It could be that next week. It could be that next month, that next year, whatever it is. But if you want to be highly, super successful, you've got to be able to do those things that make you a little bit uncomfortable. And then my fourth point is this. Quit letting your past determine your future. You have to quit letting your past determine your future. Now, I'm pretty guilty of this. So when I was growing up, I was a kid. I was born in Nesbitt, Mississippi. How many people know where Nesbitt, Mississippi? How many people have heard of Nesbitt? What? All right, yes, give that young lady a hand. Yes. Okay, Nesbitt, Mississippi. And I know a lot of you guys are impressed by this, right? It's like, oh, wow, this guy, he's from Nesbitt. All right, so I'm from Nesbitt, Mississippi. We didn't have running water, right, when I was a kid and I was growing up. There was no running water. That was, we had to go outside to use the bathroom. Now, we also had this thing called a slop jar. Anybody know what a slop jar is? Oh, yeah, okay. Excellent. All right, so for people who don't know what a slop jar is, look it up. So we used to use the slop jar in order to use the bathroom because there's no toilets inside the house. Eventually, we moved to Chicago, and when I came to Chicago, we didn't have much, as you could imagine, when I was a kid. So what did I do? I started stealing stuff. Now, here's how I started my career as a thief. No worries. By the end of the story, what do I do with that career as a thief? I quit. Yes. Somebody's heard the story before. All right, so I'm in Chicago, and I'm a kid, and we go off to the theater, me and some of my brothers, and we watch a movie. And if you remember on the L tracks, they used to have these, I guess they call them turnstiles, right? If you go out, you can't come back in. So one day I went out, I couldn't get back in, and we've got to walk home, which is a long way from the movie theater. We don't have money, right? I told you, we don't even have running water in the house. So what do? We hop the L. So that's the beginning of something, right? So we hop the L and we get home. Well, now we know, hey, you can take the L anytime you want. You don't need money. All right, so that leads to other things. From there, what do? We go to the theater. So you got 4 or 5 guys. You all go to the theater. Why should everybody pay to go to the movie theater, right? Does this make sense to you? Does this make sense to you? No. So there's no reason for everybody to pay. So one guy pays, he goes in the theater. What does he do? He go around to the back door, he opens the back door, and everybody else comes into the theater. All right, so we start sneaking in the theater. And then that leads to other things like stealing shoes, stealing clothes, eventually stealing bicycles. All right, so long story short, I joined the Marine Corps. And when I'm in the Marine Corps, I then decide that I need to be successful. Now, if you're going to be successful in the Marine Corps, stealing is probably not the way to do it, as you might imagine, right? And I found this out pretty quick when they gave me a court-martial and threw me in the brig. So this was a sign. This is a sign. I'm like, okay, maybe this is not the way to go, right? So, but what happened is, as I'm going through this entire process, I recognized that my past was dictating my future, right? The things that I had done in the past was causing me to do other things in the future. And it started all the way back, just from hopping the L. So one of the things that you should do if you want to really be successful in life is do not let your past dictate your future. Because once you start to think about the thing that was in your past and you start acting on those things, then that can really cause you big problems in life. And so that was the thing that I learned the hard way. All right, so I've only got a couple more minutes. So I think what I would like to do is I'll give you a couple of good tips from the book. Here's another thing that happens in the book. I don't have any more slides, by the way, for you guys up top there. But here's the thing that's happening in the book. So there is this, you guys have heard of Ringling Brothers, the Ringling Brothers Circus. So during the Ringling Brothers Circus, just recently, and when I say recently, I'm talking in the last couple of months, they went out of business. Ringling Brothers had actually been operating for about 146 years. At the end of that time, or I should say during that time, they had been sued many times by animal rights activists. The animal rights activists, in particular, people who cared about elephants and the mistreatment of elephants. They sued them. They had been tied up for 14 years in these lawsuits, and they had also been exposed to millions of dollars worth of damages in the lawsuits. But Ringling Brothers said, we will not quit the Elephant Acts because, as far as they were concerned, elephants were such an integral part of the circus. In other words, in their minds, the circus cannot exist without the elephants. You don't have elephants, you don't have a circus. So they refused to quit. And what happened? They ended up being sued and had to go out of business as a result because they refused to quit the Elephant Acts. On the other hand, how many people are familiar with Cirque du Soleil? Cirque du Soleil is wildly successful. They use no animals in their acts, right? Well, the difference between the two is one of the companies was willing to give up using animals in the circus. The other company wasn't. That is what caused them to go out of business. So again, this is another point, right? You need to be able to quit. If the owner of the circus, if Ringling Brothers had made the decision to quit the Elephant Act, they may still be in business today. Back in the 50s, like, I don't know, the late 50s, early 60s, the United States had got involved in a war. This war was in the Korean War. Most people are familiar with, I'm sorry, not the Korean War, but the Vietnam War. Most people are familiar with the Vietnam War. Everybody's familiar with the Vietnam War. So the United States had this theory. They called it the domino theory. And their theory was if they could bring down the North Koreans during that time, it would then cause a domino effect, a chain reaction. And then that would bring down communism all across and throughout Europe. So what they decided to do is go ahead and continue with the war. Now, at some point, the president of the country at that time recognized, and his advisors told him, they said, this war is not winnable. We cannot win the war. The war is a disaster. Our troops are being demoralized, and we're losing thousands, tens of thousands of troops. So what did the president do? The president said, I cannot quit this war. Why? He couldn't quit the war because he said, now this is kind of an absurd reason, right, to not quit a war. But he said he could not quit the war because if he had quit now, all of the lives that have been lost prior to this time would have been in vain. Now, if you think about that logic, it might make a little sense on the surface, right? But when you really think about it, it makes absolutely no sense. There is something called the sunk cost fallacy, the sunk cost fallacy. And this is something I talk about in the book, but the sunk cost fallacy says that you should not make a decision based on something that happened in the past. So in other words, just because you spent money, let's say you have a car, for example. If you have a car and you put in a new engine in the car, and then all of a sudden you find out that the car needs, I don't know, X amount of thousands of dollars worth of work, you shouldn't keep the car just because you spent the money to buy the new engine, which is what a lot of people might do. And that's referred to as the sunk cost fallacy. You're making a decision today about your future based on something that you spent in the past. So, and that's a bad thing to do. So if you're going to be successful, you have to quit being subject to the sunk cost fallacy. So this president in the Vietnam War, He said that I can't quit the war because all of the lives that have been lost would then have been in vain. Now, we recognize that this makes no sense because no matter how many lives were lost in the past, and there were lots, tens of thousands of lives, but losing more lives today was not going to bring back the lives from the past. So what should he have done? He should have quit. He should have got out of the war and come up with some kind of new plan the moment he recognized it. And this goes back to point number one. Point number one in my four-step process is that you need to quit quickly. He should have quit as soon as he recognized this doesn't work. This war is not unwinnable. We need to get out immediately. And that's what he should have done, but he shouldn't have done. And what should he really have done? He should have bought my book, right? He should have bought my book. He would have known. That's all he had to do. All right, so I'll just give you one other point, and then I'm done. So in the book, I also discussed an idea about a concept which we refer to as there's a dilemma that people go through. So when you're trying to make a decision, you have to you have multiple choices, and all of these choices are going to kind of add up on you. So there's something we call decision fatigue. Decision fatigue. So, for example, let's say that you go into a grocery store. When you go into a grocery store, you're going around, you're making hundreds. How many people think that during one day you make, 100 decisions? Let me see your hands. How many people think you make 1,000 decisions a day? 10,000. How many people think you make more than 20,000 decisions a day? Yeah. So the average human makes about 35,000 decisions every day. 35,000 decisions. You've got to make the decision, should I hit the snooze button or should I not hit the snooze button, right? When you first get up in the morning, you've got to make a decision. If you got kids, should I feed the kids or should I let them starve today? So there's all kinds of things you've got to figure out and think about as you go through your day. Every single moment you are making a decision about what to do or what not to do. So what they've done is they've done these studies, and the studies have shown that as people go through their day, when they get closer to the end of the day, their decisions become worse. You make worse decisions as your day is progressing. So they studied these judges, and what they found is that judges make positive decisions. These were people who were going in front of parole, the parole board. You know what I'm talking about, right? These are, I've never been before on a parole board. Okay. So these are people who are going in front of the parole board. So you have these judges, and they're trying to make a decision if they're going to let these guys get out of jail or not. And what they found is that the judges make positive decisions 65% of the time early in the day, in the morning. But as the day wears on, by the time they get to the end of the day, their positive decisions approach 0%. So you go from 65% positive decisions to 0% positive decisions by the end of the day. And what they concluded is that these people are suffering from something known as decision fatigue. So the more decisions you make, and as the day go on, you are going to make worse decisions for yourself, which obviously is going to interfere with your success. So the idea is that you should be able to try to figure out things that can help you make with your decisions. One of the things that President Barack Obama, he used to do, if you notice, President Obama used to wear only blue or gray suits. And someone noticed it, and they did an interview, and they asked him, they said, well, we noticed that you always wear blue or gray suits. Why do you do that? And he said, well, I wear blue or gray suits because it minimizes the decisions that I have to make. He says, I have to make thousands of decisions a day, and if I can minimize those decisions, then that can help me to do the job that I need to do. So think about ways to minimize your decisions. You can, for example, plan your meals at night. You can do all sorts of things to minimize the amount of decisions that you have to make in a day. But in any case, I can see Monte is playing. I love this guy. He's great. Give Monte a hand. You guys remember this movie, The Gong Show? And Rev Will's like, get off the stage, get off the stage. So you guys remember The Gong Show, where they used to play the music, and they come up with the hook, right? And they bring you off the stage. So I can see what's going on here. Thank you for listening.